First, Brother Cliff, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said when John Fitzgerald Kennedy was assassinated that there is no king, no ruler, no prophet who enjoys 100% the love of his people. That has never happened in these 6,000 years. And it certainly is not so in America, and it was not so in Libya. When we called Africa, our call had to go through Europe, and over $500 million went to Europe. But Gaddafi put up 400 million, and the rest of Africa put up 100 million and put up an African satellite. Now you can call directly to Africa from anywhere in the world without going through Europe. He asked the African nations to stop sending their raw materials to Europe to be made into products and then sent back to Africa to be paid for in an exorbitant price range. He wanted the Africans to take their raw materials and make them into products and then sell their products on the world market. This is the man that was assassinated, and I'll close this point. The minute he wanted Africa united, America, Britain, France, Germany, Europe was against him. In the scriptures of the Bible that in the last days perilous times will come. And betrayal will be one of the marks of the end of the world, because people will feel that they'll be safer betraying a good cause, a just cause, to save their lives. Gaddafi died in honor, fighting for the Libya that he believed in. They would never have won if NATO was not bombing day in and Libya back to the Stone Age. We were in Libya. We saw Libya being built from the ground up. We witnessed what this man did for the Libyan people. And for NATO to have bombed it like...
When Minister Louis Farrakhan speaks, the world listens, unless they're afraid of what he might say. In a rare, uncensored interview with WVON's Cliff Kelley, Farrakhan did what few have dared to do. He spoke the raw truth about Colonel Muammar Gadhafi and why the West wanted him dead. This wasn't politics. This was a warning, a lesson in betrayal, black sovereignty, and the real cost of standing up to global power. But here's the thing. What Farrakhan revealed isn't in your history books. It's not on CNN. And most of us, black people especially, were never supposed to hear it. What did Gaddafi do for Africa that shook the Western world? Why did Farrakhan call him brother, while the media called him a monster? And how does his death connect to a much larger war, not just in Libya, but on any black nation that dares to think for itself? This uncensored interview didn't just expose a man's death. It pulled back the curtain on a global system that was designed to keep Africa down and silence any black leader who refuses to bow. Stay tuned, because once you hear what Minister Farrakhan said, you won't see the world the same again.
Good afternoon, good afternoon. This is the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. I'm Cliff Kelley, streaming live at www.wvon.com. It's 4:37 and it's Tuesday, the 25th of October. And we are so pleased to have in our studio again, always pleased to have the leader of the Nation of Islam, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in our studio. And we're also pleased to have a number of members of the press here with us. We appreciate all of you folks coming out. And we do have some questions from the press that I've been given, and we will ask them about that a little later. And also, as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a panel discussion on these issues from 6 to 7 in the WVON Legacy Room, which all of you are invited to attend. So it's free, and you can come in and enjoy. We got some great people that'll be discussing this. But right now, we're going to go back to Brother Minister, who is going to tell us about some of the things that so many of us, some of the reasons, I should say, that so many of us have such great respect for Colonel Gadhafi.
First, Brother Cliff, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said when John Fitzgerald Kennedy was assassinated that there is no king, no ruler, no prophet who enjoys 100% the love of his people. That has never happened in these 6,000 years. And it certainly is not so in America, and it was not so in Libya. I never lived in Libya, so I don't know Libya like the Libyans know Libya. But I know something of the good of Muammar Gadhafi that made me to love him as a brother and to feel a great sense of loss at his assassination. Before I say to the public some of the things that Brother Gadhafi did that can be proved at no limit of time, I'd like to read to the public Brother Gadhafi's last will and testament that came out sometime yesterday. As you know, Brother Muammar Gadhafi was offered asylum in other countries. He refused to leave Libya. And as you know, he said he would be martyred in Libya. This is where he lived, this is where he would fight, and this is where he would die. So I'd like to read this will, and I want you to listen carefully to his words. He said, "This is my will. I, Muammar bin Muhammad bin Abdussalam bin Humaid bin Abu Manya bin Humaid bin Nail al-Fusi Gadhafi, do swear that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is his messenger, peace be upon him. I pledge that I will die as a Muslim." This was written on the 17th of October. He said, "Should I be killed, I would like to be buried according to Muslim rituals in the clothes I was wearing at the time of my death, but with my body unwashed in the cemetery of Sirte next to my family and relatives. I would like that my family, especially the women and children, to be treated well after my death. The Libyan people should protect its identity, achievements, history, and the honorable image of its ancestors and heroes. The Libyan people should not relinquish the sacrifices of the free and best people. I call on my supporters to continue the resistance and fight any foreign aggressor against Libya today, tomorrow, and always. Let the free people of the world know that I could have sold out our cause in return for a secure and stable personal life. I received many offers to this effect, but chose to be at the vanguard of the confrontation as a badge of duty and honor. Even if we do not win immediately, we will provide a lesson to future generations that choosing to protect the nation is an honor, and selling it out is the greatest betrayal that history will forever remember, however they try to portray this.
Colonel Muammar Gadhafi's final message wasn't delivered through the media. It was written in his will. And in it, we find a striking example of political conviction, cultural pride, and resistance against foreign control. Despite being offered safe asylum in other countries, Gadhafi refused to leave Libya. He stated plainly that he would die on Libyan soil. And he did. His final request was to be buried in the same clothes he died in, unwashed according to Islamic customs. This was a deliberate rejection of spectacle and status. But the will goes further. It speaks directly to the Libyan people, urging them to protect their identity, heritage, and national achievements. He warns them not to betray the sacrifices made by their forefathers and not to yield to external control. These weren't just sentimental statements. They were political instructions. He emphasized how he had turned down offers of safety in exchange for surrender, claiming instead that true honor lies in fighting for one's nation, not selling it out for comfort. What stands out here is the consistency of his position. Regardless of one's perception towards Gadhafi, either as a liberator or dictator, his final words reflect a worldview that is rooted in self-determination, resistance to imperialism, and his Islamic faith. In an age where leaders often compromise to survive, Gadhafi's death invites a deeper look. Why was a man who once shook hands with world leaders later hunted down and executed? And what does that say about global politics, loyalty, and the high cost of refusing to bow?
The end of his will, he was killed in a military uniform. He wanted to be buried in the khaki clothes that he was wearing. And of course, you heard the news that they took his body out in the middle of the night. He and his son, Mutassim, who we have in a picture meeting with Hillary Clinton a year and a half ago and shaking hands with Secretary of State Clinton, which should show the world that shaking hands with your enemy and receiving a pat on the back from your enemy should never lull you to sleep that the enemy has changed. The enemy is the enemy. And when you fall asleep on that knowledge, that is when the enemy will take us out. The betrayals of his inner circle. Don't think that that is overseas. That is in our own house. And we today need to watch for those close around for signs of betrayal. Because it is written in the scriptures of the Bible that in the last days perilous times will come. And betrayal will be one of the marks of the end of the world, because people will feel that they'll be safer betraying a good cause, a just cause, to save their lives. Gadhafi died in honor, fighting for the Libya that he believed in. they would never have won if NATO was not bombing day in and day out. Brother Ali Baghdadi, that is a writer and a great Arab writer, said they bombed Libya back to the Stone Age. We were in Libya. We saw Libya being built from the ground up. We witnessed what this man did for the Libyan people. And for NATO to have bombed it like this, watch for Halliburton, watch for Bechtel, watch for the vultures of London, England, and France, and others trying to rebuild the infrastructure that they purposely destroyed, which is against international law. You went for humanitarian purposes, yet 50,000 Libyans lie dead because the West wanted access to the wealth of Libya. Now let me tell you what this man did. Did he kill people? Well, hell, did our president kill people? Talk back to me. Yes. You have made your president an assassin. That the only value that he has now is that he was responsible for the death of Osama bin Laden. He was captured without a weapon. He should have been brought to America, put on trial for the American people to see this man. But he was executed, so you will never know the real truth. Then Alaki, an American citizen who is against America's policies, a drone took him out and then came back later and killed his son. Now Muammar Gadhafi and his sons lie dead. Saddam Hussein and his sons lie dead. Well, what about your sons? They're dying in Iraq on the basis of a lie. They're dying in Afghanistan on the basis of a lie. And now drones are in Pakistan, drones in Somalia, drones in Yemen. When will it stop? America, do you think that you can get away with this? If it's time for another commercial, then you go on and take the commercial. I'm just warming up.
All right. Thank you, Brother Minister. Brother Minister, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan is in our studio.
When the West paints a leader as a tyrant, the full picture often gets lost in the noise. But here's what many have never heard about Colonel Muammar Gadhafi. After nationalizing Libya's oil, Gadhafi redirected that wealth into the hands of the people. He built infrastructure, modernized education, and created one of the most robust healthcare systems in the developing world. Schools, universities, and hospitals were funded by oil revenue, not foreign aid. The literacy rate jumped from just 20% to over 80%, and life expectancy increased by more than 3 decades. How incredible! Healthcare in Libya was not a privilege. It was a right. Surgeries were paid for, even abroad if necessary. Electricity and basic food items were heavily subsidized. For aspiring farmers, land, homes, livestock, and equipment were provided, free of charge. This advancement was far beyond the norm of his time while he was growing up. Gadhafi's vision extended beyond Libya. He challenged neo-colonial economics by investing in Pan-African unity. He poured hundreds of millions into launching Africa's first communication satellite, releasing Africa from Europe's telecom monopoly. He urged African nations to process and export their raw materials, keeping the value of their resources within their borders. And perhaps most remarkably, Gadhafi was the only Arab leader to publicly apologize for the Arab role in the African slave trade. In his Green Book, he declared that the black race shall prevail throughout the world. This wasn't the rhetoric of a man who was obsessed with power. It was the doctrine of a leader who was trying to shift the global order from dependency to sovereignty. But the moment he began talking about the United States of Africa, the global powers took notice of him and his efforts, not with support, but with strategy. And in geopolitics, independence is often treated like a threat. So ask yourself, was Gaddafi removed because he was dangerous to his people, or because he was dangerous to their control?
Any money that he loaned to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, or that he loaned to the Nation of Islam and forgave for $5 million that he loaned us, for you to think that I am that kind of prostitute, that I would give myself to any man for money. It's the principle that made me his brother. Now look at what this man did. After nationalizing the oil, he used the oil revenue to benefit the Libyan people, building schools, infrastructure, universities, hospitals. He raised the literacy rate from 20% when he became the leader, and at the time of his assassination, it is 83%. Libya has one of the finest healthcare systems in the third world. All people have access to doctors, hospitals, clinics, and medicines free of charge. If a Libyan needs surgery that is unavailable in Libya, funding is provided for the surgery to be carried out overseas. He raised the life expectancy of the Libyan people from 44 years, and now at the time of his assassination, 75 years of age. Basic food items were subsidized and electricity was made available throughout the country. Brother Muammar Gadhafi has set up huge irrigation projects which were established in order to support a drive toward agricultural development and food self-sufficiency. He spent $33 billion on the man-made river, where his engineers brought water up out of the desert, and now pipelines ran from Benghazi and Tobruk almost to the door of Tunisia. Any Libyan who wanted to become a farmer was and still is given free use of land, a house, farm equipment, livestock, and seed. Brother Muammar Gadhafi vowed that his own parents, who lived in a tent in the desert, would not be housed until every Libyan was housed. He fulfilled that promise. Under the revolutionary leadership of Muammar Gadhafi, Libya has now attained the highest standard of living in Africa. Money from Libya's oil revenue is directly deposited into the bank account of every Libyan. Women have full access to education, employment, and he has enabled women to serve in the armed forces. And this is most important. Gadhafi was the first and the only leader in the Arab world to formally apologize for the Arab role in the trade in captured Africans. Gadhafi acknowledged that the black Africans were the true owners of Libya and proclaimed in his Green Book, quote, "The black race shall prevail throughout the world." Now, Brother Gadhafi took oil money and started moving the Organization of African Unity toward the African Union, with a goal toward uniting 53, now 54 nations in Africa to the United States of Africa. Whenever we called Africa, our call had to go through Europe, and over $500 million went to Europe. But Gadhafi put up 400 million, and the rest of Africa put up 100 million and put up an African satellite. Now you can call directly to Africa from anywhere in the world without going through Europe. He asked the African nations to stop sending their raw materials to Europe to be made into products and then sent back to Africa to be paid for in an exorbitant price range. He wanted the Africans to take their raw materials and make them into products and then sell their products on the world market. This is the man that was assassinated, and I'll close this point. The minute he wanted Africa united, America, Britain, France, Germany, Europe was against it. So they set up NEPAD, a new economic development pact. Gadhafi was against it. Sarkozy came up with another plan to take all the North African nations that are Arab and unite them with the nations of Southern Europe. Gadhafi rejected that. America wanted to set up on the African continent African as a launching pad for the recolonization of Africa. Gadhafi was against that. I read an article by the Jewish man from a Zionist that was the former assistant to Rumsfeld. I can't call his name. Who?
Pearl?
No, not Pearl. Wolfowitz.
Wolfowitz, yeah.
Wolfowitz.
Hold your point, Minister. We got to go to the top of the hour break. That's the kind of information that I wanted you to give us.
You're watching The Media Connection, and now we're going to hear some candid words from Minister Louis Farrakhan as he speaks to the media and their role in exposing what he believes is the truth that is not being told. Let's join Cliff Kelley and Minister Louis Farrakhan.
The media is often called the Fourth Estate, an institution meant to hold the powerful accountable, to speak truth to the people. But what happens when that institution becomes a mouthpiece for corporate and political interests? Minister Farrakhan didn't hesitate to answer. He called it what it was: betrayal. According to him, the press has become too afraid to tell the truth. Afraid of losing jobs, afraid of losing access, afraid of consequences. And when fear silences journalism, democracy itself begins to rot. In Farrakhan's words, when the media becomes a servant to its financial backers, it stops serving the people. That's not freedom, that's controlled information, and that's propaganda. And the result of this propaganda and misleading information is a society being misled. A public that's uninformed about what's done in its name, both at home and abroad. That's why Farrakhan points to the Occupy Wall Street protests as more than just a movement. They were a sign of awakening. Young people across the country, across racial lines, began to realize that the institutions they trusted had failed them. And the media's delay in covering those protests was proof of its complicity. He also highlighted a deeper danger: the erosion of truth in a system that's governed by fear. If journalists are too scared to report reality, then who defends the public interest? Who holds the powerful accountable? Farrakhan warned that when truth is treated as a threat, it becomes revolutionary. And that's exactly what scares those in control. He dropped a chilling quote: "It used to be easier to control 1 million people than to kill 1 million. Now it's easier to kill 1 million than to control them." That is the reality of a system terrified of public consciousness. But the genie is out of the bottle. Technology has made it harder to hide the truth, and the people are waking up. The real question isn't whether change is coming. The real question is, will the media evolve or be left behind? Because the future doesn't belong to those who obey power. It belongs to those who speak the truth, no matter the cost.
It's a hell of a betrayal of the American people when you will not tell them the truth because you're afraid that if you tell the truth, your bosses will take your job from you. That's a hell of a thing. You don't have a democracy when you don't have a free press. You're all slaves, and you love it. So you deserve what you get, the erosion of your democracy. You'll soon be the laughing stock of the world. It's a damn shame. That's why the children are occupying space in New York, in Boston, in Washington, in Chicago, in San Francisco, and other cities. Why? Because they're not looking to you as a source of information for them. Look how long it took you all to talk about what was going on in New York. It took you 2 weeks because the same people that controlled the banks controlled the media.
Yes, sir. That's right.
You all know it, but you're afraid to say it. But God put it on Farrakhan to say it for you.
Yes, sir.
And maybe one day you'll get some courage to stand up and give America free media, a real free fourth estate.
Yes, right.
But right now, you ain't even worth the time of day. You need somebody to tell the truth.
That's right.
You need somebody that's not afraid to die for the truth, that you could be made free.
That's right.
Because you're not free. And you don't really know what it means to really be a free white person, a free black person, a free Mexican, a free Arab. If you're afraid to tell the truth, what future does your children have in a society where truth is brushed to the curb? I thank God for the young man that invented this wonderful technology. Steve Jobs. That's the man that's freeing the whole planet, where Zbigniew Brzezinski could say, yesterday it was easier to control 1 million people than to kill 1 million people. Then now he says it's easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people, because the genie is out of the box, the cat is out of the bag, the people all over the world are waking up. And you need to wake up and free America. Then you'll have a future and your children will have a future. But if you're afraid for what? You're going to die anyway. Where can you run to escape death? If you love America, then fight for America to be free.
You're watching The Media Connection, and we're at WVON radio station with Cliff Kelley as he talks to Minister Louis Farrakhan and his reaction to the killing of Colonel Muammar Gadhafi.
Good afternoon. We're back. This is the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. It's 5:08. I'm Cliff Kelley, and we're streaming live at www.wvon.com. And, of course, we are continuing with our in-studio guest, the illustrious Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the leader of the Nation of Islam, who's been giving us some great information. We're going to take some calls very shortly. But before we do that, I want to go back, Brother Minister, and again, thank you for being here with us. I want to go back to what you were saying at the top of the hour about Paul Wolfowitz.
Paul Wolfowitz wrote an article, I think it was in the New York Times, that an African Union or a United States of Africa would not be good for the future of Israel. Now, I don't know why he said that, but if the United States of Africa would not be good for Israel, and the United States of Africa would not be good for Europe and America, then this is more reason why Gadhafi had to be taken out. And just before Gadhafi was assassinated, they said that our president was sending 100 U.S. troops into Uganda to help President Museveni in his war against the Lord's Resistance Army. Then I heard that Kenya is moving its troops to the border of Somalia to fight against Al-Shabaab, which is the Islamist group that is fighting for governance, for the power of governance in Somalia. Now, today I read that the man who is over the National Transitional Council said, and I'm quoting now, that they're going to institute Sharia. And my God, did you kill Gaddafi to have someone now institute the very thing that you've been fighting against all over the world? And this man, after he has come into some degree of power, tells you that he's going to establish Sharia and the banks will not charge interest on money following Sharia? What have you gotten yourself into, America? And did you think that if you pull all of your troops out of Iraq, that that's the end of it? No. These people are angry and hurt over the way American soldiers did them, both in Iraq and in Afghanistan and in other parts of the world. Oh, America, America. You're blinded by your arrogance. You're blinded by your military power, and it's leading you step by step to your destruction.
Just before Gaddafi's fall, American troops were quietly sent into Uganda. Kenya moved toward Somalia's border. And across North Africa, U.S. interests grew even the more, all under the banner of fighting extremism. But what if the real battle wasn't about terrorism, but territory? Minister Farrakhan raised a question rarely asked in mainstream discourse. Why was Gaddafi truly a target? Consider this. Gaddafi pushed for a United States of Africa, one currency, one voice, and one future, free from Western manipulation. He resisted U.S. military presence on African soil. He challenged France, Britain, and America's plans to recolonize Africa through economic and military proxies. And then came the final blow. He called for Africa to control its resources and to stop relying on European banks and systems. For global powers built on dominance, this vision was unacceptable. Then, in a stunning twist of irony, the post-Gaddafi regime announced plans to implement Sharia law, something the U.S. had claimed to oppose in previous conflicts. So the question becomes, did the West remove one system of governance only to replace it with another they claimed to be fighting? Farrakhan warned that America, who were blinded by military power and arrogance, is sleepwalking toward its moral collapse. When a nation justifies endless war in the name of security, while hiding its motives behind humanitarian language, it erodes its foundation. And when it destroys leaders who dare to defy its will, the world is left to ask, was this about liberation or control? In the end, Gaddafi's assassination wasn't just the end of a leader, it was the silencing of a global challenge to Western dominance. But the questions he raised, and the legacy he left behind, remain. History isn't finished speaking. Are we ready to listen?